All right, let's get right into it. Every big company has these complex systems, right? They're supposed to keep everything running smoothly, honestly. But what happens when an auditor finds a crack in one of those systems? Well, that's when one of the most important, high stakes conversations in business kicks off, the formal report to a company's top leaders. Now, take a look at this. It might just look like a standard flow chart, but it is so much more than that. I want you to think of this as the playbook, the actual script for how auditors talk to the people at the very top. In the biz, they call them those charged with governance, or TCWG for short. We're talking about the board of directors, the audit committee, the people in charge. And this script, this process, it makes sure that nothing critical gets missed. So, okay, this lays out the how, but what's the story behind it? What's the journey an auditor goes on from finding some little flaw all the way to explaining its huge implications to a boardroom full of executives? Well, it all begins with the hunt for weaknesses. You see, auditors, they're not just crunching numbers. They are stress testing the very systems that are supposed to protect those numbers. They're looking for any potential cracks in what's known as internal control. So what exactly is a deficiency in internal control? Here's an easy way to think about it. Imagine the warning lights in your car. A deficiency is kind of like finding out your check engine light is busted. Now, the engine could be perfectly fine at this moment, but if a problem pops up later, the one system designed to warn you about it is broken. That's what auditors are looking for, those broken warning lights inside a company's financial systems. And that leads to a really important question. I mean, is a tiny one-off glitch the same as a massive system-wide failure? The answer, of course, is no, not at all. And telling the difference between them is absolutely critical. And this breaks it down perfectly. On one side, you've got your general deficiencies. These are weaknesses for sure, and they get noted. But on the other side, you've got significant deficiencies. These are the big ones. These are the flaws that are so serious, they set off all the alarms and have to be brought directly to the people at the very top, those charged with governance. So once an auditor finds one of these significant problems, how does that conversation actually go down? Well, it's definitely not just a casual phone call. It's guided by a really clear set of principles, these rules of engagement, to make sure the message lands with the seriousness it deserves. And here are the 5 core principles for that conversation. First, you've got responsibilities. Everyone needs to be on the same page about who's responsible for what. Then you define the form, timing, and content, the how, when, and what of the conversation. The communication of findings has to be super clear, no jargon. The auditor's independence is non-negotiable, gotta stay objective. And maybe most importantly, it's a two-way communication. This isn't a lecture, it's a real dialogue so the leadership can ask questions and truly understand the risks. Okay, so you've got the ground rules laid out. How do those principles turn into an actual physical report? This is the part where the auditor has to take all their findings and document them in a formal written communication. This is where we get into the nitty-gritty. What exactly has to be in that letter to the board? What makes it a complete, and more importantly, an actionable report? And this is basically the checklist. It starts with the requirement to report, stating plainly that this isn't optional. The report also goes to management. Then you have to define the content, what the weakness is and what could happen because of it. You've got to provide supporting detail, the proof. Then you plan for follow-up to make sure it gets fixed. And finally, you have to consider interested third parties, like, do regulators need to know about this? It's a really thorough process, leaving no stone unturned. So why all this formality? Why go through all this trouble? Well, this whole structured process isn't just about paperwork. It's about something much, much bigger. It's about accountability. And you know, this quote from the source document just says it all. The entire point, the objective, is to create a clear path to talk about not just the problems, the significant deficiencies, but also the recommendations on how to fix them. And that right there is the key takeaway. This whole thing, this entire flowchart, it wasn't designed just to point fingers. It's a constructive tool. It's a roadmap for finding a company's weak spots so they can be strengthened, so the company can become more resilient and ultimately more trustworthy. So I'll just leave you with this final thought. When we see a big company collapse and it's all over the news, it's easy to blame bad systems. But after walking through this, you have to wonder,
Was the real problem a breakdown in having this exact kind of critical conversation? Something to think about.